Hello and welcome to Forestedge Kart Club on the 5th of September 2021 for round 8, the final round of the 2021 Blue Challenge. The driver's already up on the grid and ready to go for 2 short rolling laps and then 8 minutes plus a lap of action here at Forestedge this afternoon. The Blue Challenge and its subclass is all going to be settled in this race, and in the Blue Challenge overall standings it's kart number 1 Anthony Cleal leading the way, ahead of Mike Bell, with Russell O'Neill and Ben Joseph all separated only by 11 points, so very tight up at the top of the table. Drew shown 5th ahead of David Watts and Sylvain Bessier, with Paul Alexander heading up another close-knit group with himself, Rob Mortimer, David Good, David Waldron, Billy Thomas and Kevin O'Neill, all separated by just 12 points. Ron Jones in behind them, and Tom Parker is going to run out the top 15, ahead of Sam Dybel, Phil Shears, Rich Puddle, Robin Stones and Paul Dybel. In the Blue Masters, Anthony Cleal leading the way ahead of Russell O'Neill, only 7 points ahead of Ben Joseph, and David Good leading another close pack in behind, ahead of Rob Mortimer, David Waldron, Paul Alexander and Kevin O'Neill, separated by only 11 points. Ron shown in behind him, Billy Thomas running at the top 10, ahead of Phil Shears, Paul Dybel, Robin Stones, Chris Underhill and Stuart Gray. As karts rolling out, Tom Parker looking like he's having a few issues there. In the Blue Veteran standings, Anthony Cleal leading the way, ahead of David Good, Paul Alexander, Rob Mortimer, David Waldron and Kevin O'Neill, separated by only 10 points. Ron shown 7th, ahead of Phil Shears, Paul Dybel and Robin Stones running at the top 10. Ahead of Chris Underhill, Stuart Gray, Nigel Vickery, Adrian Helps and Steve Groves. In the Blue Legends, it's all to play for. David Good holds the lead with a 7-point advantage ahead of Kevin O'Neill. Ron shown in 3rd ahead of Robin Stones, Chris Underhill, Stuart Gray, Adrian Helps, John Hartshorn, Mark Cook, Mike Watson, Jack Webster. In the Blue Top Weights, it's Ben Joseph leading the way ahead of Rob Mortimer and Ron Shown, Billy Thomas in 4th ahead of Paul Dybel, Phil Shears, Adrian Helps, Mark Cook, Mike Watts and Alan Lewis. As Anthony Cleal starting to back the grid up into 2x2 formation. In heat number 1 today, Anthony Cleal would take the win ahead of Ben Joseph, with Taylor Waldron in 3rd ahead of Mike Bell and Russell O'Neill. Billy Thomas 6th ahead of Steve Groves, David Waldron, Rob Mortimer and Tom Parker. You see a very, very close group in the midfield now. Heat 2, Taylor Waldron would take the win ahead of Mike Bell. Russell O'Neill would be 3rd again ahead of Anthony Cleal. Then Ben Joseph, Paul Alexander, Phil Shears, David Good, Billy Thomas and Sarita Schoen running at the top 10. And in Heat 3, Russell O'Neill would take the win from Billy Thomas, Anthony Cleal, Ben Joseph, Taylor Waldron, Mike Bell, Paul Alexander, Sarita Schoen, Kevin O'Neill and Phil Shears. As we're going around for one more rolling lap. Ron Show not particularly happy about that, but the grid will look like this. Anthony Cleal, kart number 1 on pole position. Joining him on the front row is Taylor Waldron, who picked out Russell O'Neill on tiebreak. Ben Joseph 4th ahead of Mike Bell and Billy Thomas, with Paul Alexander, Phil Shears, Sarita Schoen and David Waldron running at the top 10. In behind is Rob Mortimer and Steve Groves, and then Ron Schoen beating out Legends rival David Good on tiebreak. Kevin O'Neill 15th ahead of Tom Parker. Kart number 24, Rich Puddle starting down in 17th, look for him to make a charge through. John Hartshorn 18th, and Nigel Vickery rounding out the grid here at Forestedge. So 19 Formula Blues about to take the lights for the final round of the 2021 Blue Challenge, into the chicane and then through the cut through. Anthony Cleal leading the way. And away we go, and it's a good start from Cleal. O'Neill's gone with him, so too is Waldron, Bell and Joseph. Pretty even start all up and down the field, is now on board with Mortimer. David Waldron ahead of us looking to go up the inside of Phil Shears. Looks like he's made it stick, but through the grandstand they go for the first time. It's Cleal leading from Waldron and O'Neill. Practically everybody else still in 3rd place, as there's Waldron slotting in behind. Now we're on board with Nigel Vickery. Ahead of us is Tom Parker and Kevin O'Neill going side by side. As David Waldron is indeed in trouble, is now up towards midgets. It's Cleal leading from Waldron, O'Neill, Bell, Joseph, Thomas, and that's Rich Puddle up the inside of David Waldron. So Puddle already up a couple of spots, looks like 2 or 3. As around the final corner for the first time, it's Cleal, Waldron, O'Neill, Joseph, Bell and Thomas starting to pull away. Then it's Alexander and Schoen. Then it's Shears, Mortimer and the rest of the pack battling in behind. Round the Haynes Loop and through past the grandstand. Sarita Schoen all over the back of Paul Alexander, and now we're on board with Rob Mortimer closing right up to the back of Phil Shears. We go down towards Windsor's Dip. Mortimer looking to switch through up at the inside through Anson's. As Phil Shears strikes the curb, Mortimer through up the inside as Ron Schoen gives us a perfect look as that's Ben Joseph challenging for third. Russell O'Neill going to hang on around the outside. There's kart 24, Rich Puddle making the move on Ron Schoen as around the final turn. Cleel and Waldron starting to break away from O'Neill. Paul Alexander still holding off Sarita Schoen, and it's all side by side and behind. That's Puddle making the move on Steve Groves and now challenging Phil Shears as well as they go around the Haynes Loop, a group of 7 karts all in as one. Now we're back on board with Ron Schoen. Steve Groves ahead of us and Phil Shears ahead of him. Groves looking to the inside of a Winger's Dip. It's not going to pay off as Shears covers it through Anson's. Now Ron Schoen's got the run up towards the chicane. But up towards midgets, Cleel and Waldron still breaking away. And that's Billy Thomas at the inside of Mike Bell who's going to slide right. There's Mortimer now being reeled in by Rich Puddle, and then Phil Shears holds 11th at the moment. And there's Bell making another mistake, so a problem potentially for kart number 4. Is now on board with Paul Alexander going up towards the Haynes Loop and up the inside, and Bell's off! Bell's into the wall! And that's big, that's second place in the Blue Challenge out of the race, as Sarita Schoen in the number 2 makes the move on Paul Alexander at the same time, so up 2 places for Schoen. Phil Shears hanging on against Steve Groves for the time being as they go around Winger's Dip once again, and Groves has got the run on exit through Anson's. Looking to the inside for the chicane, Shears covers it though. And now Ron Schoen's got the run as they go up the hill. Up towards midgets once again. Tom Parker's overtaken you there, Ron, as a good move there from Tom Parker in the number 63. With Groves once again looking to the inside of Phil Shears, but Parker now in behind ahead of Schoen, Good and O'Neill. Back to the lead, Taylor Waldron still stuck to the back bumper of Anthony Cleel. It's starting to get a bit spread out in behind. Rich Puddle now on the back of Rob Mortimer, and then the Shears group with Groves and Parker right on his bumper. Then there's Schoen, and behind us is David Good and Kevin O'Neill. As up the inside looks to go Steve Groves. Ron Schoen psyching himself up to have a go at Tom Parker through midgets. Nothing doing in error, I'm afraid, but Schoen's going to get the run on the exit as Parker strikes the curb down towards Climate. But all staying status quo in that battle as now back to the lead once again. It's Cleel ahead of Waldron, starting to gap Russell O'Neill. Then there's Ben Joseph in behind, then Billy Thomas. Sarita Schoen, Paul Alexander and Rich Puddle's made the move against Rob Mortimer. Round past the grandstand once again. There's Kevin O'Neill on the back of David Good. It's through midgets. Cleel ahead of Waldron still acting like a shadow with those top 2. Now we're on board with Ron Schoen once again. Back up the hill towards midgets. There's Tom Parker to the inside of Steve Groves. And sure enough, Parker makes the move. Is now on the onboard camera of Mike Bell off to the side of the road watching the top 6 go by. There's Schoen and Alexander, but Puddle was gaining, so Rich Puddle's still not done with his charge. But back on board once again of Ron Schoen. Now Steve Groves ahead of us. What can Schoen do about the Cosmic? As Tom Parker sets off after Phil Shears. Now we're on board Paul Alexander. And that's Rich Puddle in the kart number 24 up the inside on the way into the chicane. Good move from Puddle. And sure enough, problems for Phil Shears, and he didn't even get through the chicane. You could see on the shot. Still not come through there, as there's Sarita Schoen making a small adjustment. Rich Puddle gaining on her, as still Taylor Waldron trying to attack Anthony Cleel. Thinks about looking down onto Winger's Dip, but to no avail, as there's Shears dragging his cart off to the side. That looks pretty terminal. So unfortunate end to Shears' afternoon. Meanwhile, there's Cleel and Taylor Waldron still tucked up tight behind him. You can throw a blanket over these two as they go through midgets and now on the run down towards Climate. Russell O'Neill trying to stay in touch in 3rd spot. There's Puddle closing in on Sarita Schoen as around the final turn. Across the line once again go Waldron and Cleel. Then there's O'Neill, Joseph and Thomas, the 2 Welshmen hanging on in 4th and 5th. And Rob Mortimer starting to close in on Paul Alexander's Mad Crop. So a battle still brewing. You get the sense between the two drivers with the orange helmets as they go through past the grandstand. Then it's Parker, Groves, Schoen, Good and O'Neill going around the Haynes loop. Looks like Parker's trying to check out ahead of Groves. Through midgets once again. Cleel hanging on against Waldron. Eking that gap out against Russell O'Neill. And here comes Rich Puddle up the inside of Sarita Schoen. Schoen's going to try and switch back underneath, but it looks like Puddle's going to keep the positions. They go towards Climate. And yep, sure enough, Puddle into shot first ahead of Sarita Schoen. You would imagine that Puddle should be able to start making more moves, as that's John Hartshorn struggling on. Anthony Cleel and Taylor Waldron starting to catch him up. Russell O'Neill in there as well. Now we're back on board with Rob Mortimer. We go around the grandstand. Paul Alexander ahead of us is getting bigger and bigger over the last couple of laps. Through Winger's Dip and Anson's, and now on the run up towards the chicane. See Mortimer gaining on the way in. And Taylor Waldron gaining on Anthony Cleel through Climate that time. Now he's right on the back bumper of Anthony Cleel. Now here's Russell O'Neill, and John Hartshorn's going to point him by. Hartshorn really having a problem with that kart at the moment. But Taylor Waldron now right on the back bumper of Anthony Cleel. Through the grandstand, down towards Winger's Dip. Waldron to the inside. Cleel's going to hang on and cover him off through Anson's and up towards the chicane. Waldron's still behind. Now back on board with Ron Schoen. He's starting to close back in against Steve Groves. Tom Parker starting to break away from this fight, but Groves definitely under attack from Ron Schoen. They go down the hill towards Winger's Dip. Put up into midgets. That's Rich Puddle going up the inside of John Hartshorn. Now around the final turn once again. Waldron looking to try and launch another attack against Cleel. There's Russell O'Neill. He looks safe in third. But Rich Puddle ranging in on the back of Billy Thomas's Birrell. So that's a battle brewing for 5th spot. As Cleel defending down the hill towards Winger's Dip, this time ahead of Waldron. There's Joseph, Thomas and Puddle. And there's Rob Mortimer getting ever closer to Paul Alexander. Bit of a gap in behind back to the Parker group, but Taylor Waldron now making a small adjustment. So either he's having a little problem or he's about to launch another attack against Anthony Cleel. And here comes Rich Puddle to the inside of midgets against Billy Thomas. Looks like he's made the move stick. But across the line once again, Cleel and Waldron taking the last lap board ahead of Russell O'Neill. And sure enough, Puddle hangs on against Billy Thomas. So that's a move for 5th spot. And now, can Waldron do anything about Anthony Cleel? He's looking to the outside down towards Winger's Dip. Going to be difficult to get around a driver of Anthony Cleel's caliber down there anyway, let alone around the outside. There's Rob Mortimer, ever closer to Paul Alexander. What can he do on this final lap? But up towards midgets for the final time. Anthony Cleel looks like he's got the biggest gap against Waldron he's had all race. Just Climate and the final turn to go. Rich Puddle closing in on Ben Joseph, but I think he's going to run out of time. But around the final corner to take the win of the final round of the Blue Challenge, Anthony Cleel takes the win and secures the championship ahead of Waldron and O'Neill. Ben Joseph holds off Rich Puddle. Billy Thomas going to come across the line, so too Sarita Schoen. And Paul Alexander just about hanging on against Rob Mortimer, who gives it everything in the final turn to try and close the gap. A good racing up towards the front of the field, but we're not done yet as Tom Parker's going to go across the line next ahead of Groves. And David Good's passed Ron Schoen, so that's pretty big in the Legends battle. David Good takes the class on the line ahead of Schoen and O'Neill. And now we jump on board with Nigel Vickery just coming around the final turn. And across the line for kart number 67, the Gillard of Vickery, going to round out our finishers here today, this afternoon. As all the karts now back into Parc Fermé. Going through scrutineering and the customary front fairing inspections, and after they are done we will be getting the official results. And everything was deemed fine and dandy as the results stood from the circuit, as Anthony Cleel took the win ahead of Taylor Waldron. Russell O'Neill running out the top 3 ahead of Ben Joseph. Rich Puddle going up 12 spots to finish 5th ahead of Billy Thomas. With Sarita Schoen 7th ahead of Paul Alexander, Rob Mortimer and Tom Parker. Steve Groves was 11th ahead of David Good, Ron Schoen, Kevin O'Neill and Nigel Vickery would round out the finishers on the lead lap. John Hartshorn would struggle home with the carburettor problem in 16th, and Phil Shears, Mike Bell and David Waldron failed to make the flag. And what that's going to do to the Blue Challenge is going to confirm that Anthony Cleal is the 2021 Blue Challenge champion. Russell O'Neill's going to jump up to 2nd place ahead of Ben Joseph. Mike Bell's going to slip to 4th ahead of Sarita Schoen, with Paul Alexander holding on to 6th spot ahead of Billy Thomas, Rob Mortimer, David Good and David Waldron running at the top 10. Kevin O'Neill 11th ahead of Ron Schoen, with Tom Parker, David Watts and Sylvain Vestier making up the top 15. They're going to be ahead of Phil Shears, Sam Dybel, Rich Puddle, Taylor Waldron and Robin Stones. Those seedings are going to be very important coming towards the grand finals for this year. But in the Blue Masters standings, it's Anthony Cleal taking the title ahead of Russell O'Neill and Ben Joseph. Paul Alexander 4th, beating out Rob Mortimer by only 2 points. And then a further 2 points back to David Good, with David Waldron, Kevin O'Neill, Ron Schoen and Billy Thomas making up the top 10. With Schoen and Thomas even on points, so Schoen takes the victory on tiebreak. Phil Shears 11th ahead of Paul Dybel and Robin Stones, with Chris Underhill and Nigel Vickery rounding out the top 10. In the Blue Veteran standings, it's another championship for Anthony Cleal ahead of Paul Alexander, with Rob Mortimer edging out David Good by just a single point in that final race. David Waldron in 5th ahead of Kevin O'Neill and Ron Schoen, with Phil Shears, Paul Dybel and Robin Stones making up the top 10. They're ahead of Chris Underhill, Nigel Vickery, Stuart Gray, Steve Groves and John Hartshorn. There's also the Blue Legends standings, and David Good is going to take the title there with another win on the day. Kevin O'Neill with a game run into 2nd ahead of Ron Schoen, with Robin Stones 4th ahead of Chris Underhill, Stuart Gray, John Hartshorn, Adrian Helps, Mark Cook, Mike Watts and Jeff Webster rounding out the class. And in the Blue Top Weights, it's going to be Ben Joseph with another win on the day to secure the title ahead of Rob Mortimer, with Ron Schoen in 3rd ahead of Billy Thomas and Phil Shears. Paul Dybel 6th ahead of Adrian Helps, Mark Cook, Mike Watts and Alan Lewis. It's not the only championships going on, there is also the Tabor Customer Prize Fund, where Russell O'Neill's going to extend his gap at the top of the table. He's ahead of Anthony Cleal, Sarita Schoen, David Good and Ben Joseph moving up into 5th. As far as the juniors are concerned, it's Jamie Dart, the top junior, but Sam Mitchell is rapidly closing in on him, and with more juniors set to join the fray in the rest of the season, that could get very competitive. But that is it for the action here at Forestedge, so we will join you again in a couple of weeks from Mansell Raceway for round 3 of the Two Counties Kart Club Championship. So we will see you then. Goodbye.